Welcome into the CHGO Blackhawks Podcast. Happy Tuesday. I'm Jay Zawaski with Greg Boysen and Mario Tirabassi. Thanks for being with us. We've got a big show for you today. We're going to attempt to get through our mailbag leftovers from Monday, but they might even seep into Wednesday.
Oh, man.
Because today at 2:30, we're going to be joined by our buddy, our pal, Chris Peters of FloHockey. He's going to talk about the Bears. There's a Bears graphic on my screen. The Blackhawks 2023 NHL Draft Class. He was also at the World Junior Summer Showcase where Frank Nazar, Sam Renzel, Gavin Hayes, and Oliver Moore played. So he's got recent eyes on them. So a ton to get to with Chris. But why don't we get right to it? We'll get to the mailbag questions. Before we do, smash that like button on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube page as well. Podcast listeners, follow, subscribe, rate, review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you're looking for a way to help us, aside from becoming a diehard, aside from going to our events, aside from buying merch at chgolocker.com, still do all those things, but it's free and it takes 15 seconds to leave us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and we would really appreciate that. And know this, podcast listeners, a 4-star review is virtually a 0-star review, so don't do that. A 5-star review is what all podcasts need. So if you enjoy a podcast, even if it's imperfect, I mean, this one's perfect, but others are imperfect, still, to show support, leave them a 5-star review. All right?
You can always ask Chris Peter about the Hershey Bears, your reigning Calder Cup champions.
Great uniforms.
True. Yes.
True. Love those uniforms.
Yes, the chocolate brown.
The brown and white. That's Mount Carmel High School does that, too, and they look great. I didn't go there, but good-looking uniforms.
I'm not too impressed by brown and white as like.
I just think it's so.
It's Hershey, Pennsylvania. You
Yeah,
gotta
it's
be
gotta
chocolate
be.
colored.
Well, sure.
And your Bears.
Yeah.
Bears.
Bears.
And Tay Zanjay loves those colors, too.
Yes.
Chocolate
Great
Bears.
chocolate rain reference.
Okay, that's what it is.
Hershey Bears.
I'm slow on the references today.
There's got to be a Tay Zanjay Roosevelt. And if there's not, there should be soon.
absolutely has.
There's got to be a
not.
chocolate rain Roosevelt.
There's not.
There's not like a YouTube.
You can't get the rights to a Tay
All-star.
Zanjay.
I mean, they typically buy the rights to things that are actually going to sell.
Good point. That's a fair point.
Like
That's a good business plan then.
Yes.
Okay.
Like Star Wars, Marvel, things people actually pay attention
I didn't
to.
think nostalgia sold. Anyway, let's get to the mailbag. Let's
All right,
rifle through
mailbag.
these while we wait for Chris Peters. I can't wait for this interview, by the way, just to get even more excited. I've had 2 nights in a row of hockey dreams. I'm ready. Let's go.
Any of them involve bagels?
No, I had bagel for lunch, though.
All right, that's good.
How about Hagel's?
Bagels, too. Yeah.
All right, well, let's get
different
into
dream,
Mailbag
Greg.
Monday on a
Still hockey
Tuesday.
Jerk.
Before I put it on screen, does this one look new to you guys?
That is new, yes.
Okay, here we go.
Yep.
This is from Tom Quinn, our good friend Tinley Irish Hawk. He says, when did your passion for hockey start, and how did you get hooked? I.e., you played hockey as a kid, you met a player,
Yeah.
etc.
There's a lot of ways it started.
Yeah.
I
It's a
mean,
multitude of.
easiest one for me is my parents were huge hockey fans. They had season tickets early in their marriage before they had kids. My dad took my sister and I to games at the Chicago Stadium in the mid-'80s. I was very young. I mean, I remember seeing Darren Pang play for the Blackhawks. So, yeah, it just started. My dad and my parents, big-time Hawks fans back in the day. The road game, the home games weren't on TV. Every night the Blackhawks had a home game, my dad put the stereo in the living room on, and we grew up in a 3-bedroom apartment So when you put the living room stereo on, everybody heard it, whether you wanted to or not. So it was just from there. I mean, it was part of my upbringing. It was always hockey was the number one sport growing up in our house. So it just stuck from there.
For me, the seed was planted. My dad got tickets to the 1991 All-Star Game at Chicago Stadium with that famous anthem. Mm-hmm. That was like, I don't know if that was my first time at the stadium, but
that'll do it.
Certainly the most memorable.
Yeah. If that doesn't hook you, then you have no chance.
And then over the years, a handful of games, I went to a game with my uncle at the stadium, and Hawks scored a goal, and I stood up and cheered and sat down, and the way those hinges go, it like cut off the tip of my fingernail. I was just bleeding like crazy. I'm like, we're not leaving,
It's hockey. You're a hockey fan.
Yeah, and then I kind of, at one point, I just decided that I was going to commit myself to being a diehard Hawks fan. I was at that age where I was sort of looking for an identity, looking for something to differentiate myself. I loved my experiences at the game. So 7th or 8th grade, I'm like, I'm really going to do this. I'm really going to become a diehard Hawks fan and listen to every game on the radio, watch every game on TV. I got a Hawks Pro Line jacket for Christmas. Pro Line was cooler than Starter. Here's why.
Oh, yeah.
Because on the back, it said Hawks in big black and white letters instead of just the logo up here. I know it wasn't as expensive or as fashionable, but I like the Pro Line better because of the back.
Hey, satin, baby.
And then when the NHL video games came out, that's like really what made me beyond a fan of the Hawks. It helped me learn like players around the league. Because back then, early 90s, you're not able to watch every game like ESPN Plus and really follow the league very well.
Yeah,
so
it was through the NHL video games. Like 94 is like the iconic game, but I think 93, 92. Like
92, I think 92 is the first one that came out.
I mean, 93 was, of course, you can still make Gretzky's head bleed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then,
but 94 was
the
awesome.
only other way you really learned about other teams was like collecting hockey cards or the sticker books, the Panini sticker books. I used to love those too.
Yeah.
Let's see. What was the first one?
First one
Mario's,
that was like
91
under EA Sports, 91.
Yep.
NHL 91. Yeah, probably.
Mario's like, I'm a kid. Every game was on TV.
It was just called NHL
I didn't
Hockey.
have these problems.
NHL hockey.
Because if you remember the first few NBA ones,
they probably didn't think, this will be a yearly thing.
Right.
Yeah, because remember the NBA franchise from EA Sports, the first couple ones was like Bulls versus Lakers.
Yeah,
Bulls
they were the
versus
only teams.
Blazers.
Yeah.
And then they expanded.
Only teams people cared to play with.
Yeah.
Remember Jordan versus Bird?
That game
was
was
just
awesome.
one-on-one.
That was on the Nintendo.
It started as Dr. J versus
I remember
Larry
that,
Bird.
yeah.
On Apple IIe.
Heard.
Jordan versus Bird. Yeah.
My dad worked for IBM, so I was not allowed to have an Apple until I moved out.
We skipped.
yeah.
Well, we didn't. let
Yeah,
Mario
I was very much influenced by the Mighty Ducks when that movie came out in the early 90s. Influenced me to buy rollerblades and a street hockey stick and everything, and then it just kind of evolved from there. Wanted to play ice hockey. Started playing when I was really young. Not as young as the kids I was playing with, so I was way behind them. So that dream started and stopped very quickly. But yes, kept playing with it. Became a Hawks fan in the late 90s because I was I was in Kenosha. It was right on the border of Wisconsin and Illinois. Got WGN radio and all that. So the crossover was there. I was like, well, they're the closest team to me, so that's what I went with. And then as I was kind of getting into that, the video games played a big factor in it too, playing the NHL games growing up. And then I have an older cousin who played hockey at Notre Dame. He was drafted by the Rangers, played in the AHL. So seeing him play in person amplified it even more. And then from there it was, going to Blackhawks games, going to Milwaukee Admirals games, playing so on and so forth. And then by the time I was 14, by the time I was like 16, 17, that's when Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane arrived, and it's been what it is since then.
Yep.
So,
all right, Lawrence, you got an answer?
Oh, you want my opinion?
Sure.
Well, I think I've told the story before. How back in the day, my first ever experience at the stadium was I got to sit front row in the corner. And it was against Lanny McDonald and the Flames. And seeing his big giant mustache coming at me was pretty amazing. And then this, of course, the stanchions, the glass stanchions, were not as well sealed as they are now, and so 2 pieces of glass over, there was a huge check in the third period. It came out and like cut a guy over the eye, like 4 people down, and I was like, "This is amazing."
Bloodlust.
This happens
exactly.
every
That's how my
game.
wife got hooked. She was at a game sitting up close, and there was a fight, and someone's leg broke in half.
Oh my god!
And she's like, "This is it. I'm hooked." And that's how we started
This is
dating,
my
going to
deal.
Hawks games together.
You see something like that, you're either all in or you're completely out. There's no in between.
Yeah.
We paid for blood.
All right, let's keep moving on here. Windy City Hockey. Not a hockey question today, but what movie is your favorite all time that you can find yourself rewatching anytime? I'll start The Fugitive.
I feel like we had this last week, didn't we?
Something similar.
Something
Yeah.
similar.
I mean, there's-
'cause I remember thinking like I have to remember what did I say as my favorite movie.
My
'Cause
all-time favorite movie is It's a Wonderful Life. It's
I
my
love that.
all-time
I am a
favorite
big
movie.
fan of that
Yeah.
movie.
Mary!
That's
Come on.
that movie tugs at the heartstrings. For me, I mean, if I have to pick one movie and I have no problem watching it a million times, it's Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
To me, it's a perfect movie, and the bad guys win at the end. There's very few movies where the bad guys win at the
Yeah.
end. It's
Yep.
a nice, refreshing change.
If there's a movie that I have to pick as one of my favorites that I would just have to watch over and over, it's actually Anchorman. I think it's one of
seen
my
that in a while.
favorite Will Ferrell movies.
It's a good one.
I didn't hear which one you said.
Anchorman.
Anchorman. I'm sorry. Okay.
Anchorman. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, we just did a draft on the Chicago Sports Podcast of 2000s movies with
Saw
the
that.
aughts.
Yeah.
You won.
I chose Step Brothers over Anchorman, which is tough for me being
think
in this
that's a
industry.
that's a
But
tough
Step
choice.
Brothers has always had more lines and more.
Here's I think
I mean,
I think we all suffered after a while of Anchorman fatigue because everyone was quoting it. Everyone
Yeah.
was like it was, and people like overdid the quoting. But I think going back and looking at it again, you would realize how great of a movie it was. But I love Step Brothers.
Step
When
Brothers.
I
Step
was-
Brothers is a Shawshank for me. If it's on, I'm watching.
Yeah.
Step Brothers is great, but for me, Anchorman and specifically quoting that movie is like how I made
Yeah.
friends as
Sure.
like a freshman in high school.
100%. Yeah, I agree.
I'm going to maybe be a little hot takey on this one. I didn't like Step Brothers.
Oh,
It didn't do it for me.
the fucking Catalina wine
I
mixer.
think you need to see that again.
Yeah.
Great one.
It didn't.
Come on, boats and hose and
Yeah.
Too annoying for me. Like it was just like, oh, these guys need to tune it down. a
prestige
notch.
worldwide.
liked it.
Wide.
Man, I
Didn't
love
do
that
it for
movie.
me, man. Maybe I'll give it another shot.
It's because someone told you it was good,
probably.
so you immediately
Probably,
dismissed
yeah,
it.
because everybody here likes it, so I'm like, yeah, that
Honestly,
movie sucks.
it's the other characters. It's like Adam Scott and
Yeah.
Catherine
I
Hahn.
don't like Adam
Catherine
Scott.
Hahn is great. in
Catherine
that.
Hahn was amazing
She was-
in that
I
film.
don't like Adam Scott.
That's the idea.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
You're supposed to hate him.
But no, I don't mean him like like
Not the
actor.
character.
The
Like, I
character
don't-
is
I-
detestable.
He's just so
love
smarmy
Adam
looking.
Scott.
He's got a punchable face.
Oh, the two of them wearing tuxedos.
Yeah,
You
it's
wanna
okay.
punch
Mine's
me,
not
don't
movie
you?
accurate. This is great.
All right, let's keep going
That's
here. E-Man, Lord of the Thunder at Lord of the Thunder 31. Would you guys consider Phil Kessel a Hall of Famer or a Hall of Very Gooder?
Longest Ironman streak of all time and 3-time Stanley Cup winner. Hall of Famer.
Over 1,000 games played, over 1,000 points, 4 goals short of reaching the 500 goal club, 3-time Stanley Cup winner, longest Ironman streak.
Yeah.
U.S. silver in 2010. Was he on that team?
Don't know. I can't
No,
remember.
he was on the 2014 team, but
I
they
don't
came up
know.
short.
He
And he was famously not on the World Cup hockey team.
right.
Similarity scores on Hockey Reference. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Hall of Famers on Phil Kessel's similarity scores.
Yeah.
Frank Mihaljevic, Ron Francis, Doug Gilmour, Denny Savard, Ted Lindsay. The ones who are not Hall of Famers, Ryan Getzlaff, who probably will be.
Probably.
Rick Nash, who probably will be. Jason Spezza. Claude Giroux, who probably will be. So, yes, I would say he qualifies as a Hall
Phil
of Famer.
Kessel's a Hall of Famer. I mean, I know there's
Phil
like
Kessel
some
was
recency.
on that team, so he's got a U.S. silver.
There's some
Olympics.
probably going to be some recency bias because he hasn't been, playing at a All-Star Hall of Fame level for a couple
Sure.
of years. But
Yeah.
anybody who's played as long as he does, very rarely are you as productive your last couple of years in
Yeah.
the league. I mean, the dude is in the lineup literally every night for the past 11 seasons.
Well, until this postseason, but yeah.
Right. But
yeah,
that
hasn't
didn't
missed a
affect
game.
the record though, right? Because that's a
No,
regular
it's
season
only
record.
regular seasons, yeah.
But he didn't miss those games because he was hurt or anything like that. The dude plays every night. He's probably played through some nasty injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just like...
He's a folk hero.
Yeah, he's a regular guy. Like, if you see him pass you on the street, you're not going to think that that's a guy that's made tens of millions of dollars being a professional athlete.
Yeah.
He's awesome. I love Phil Kessel.
Other little Kessel stats: 3-time All-Star, 2 seasons in the top 10 in goals, 4 seasons in the top 10 in points. Yeah, he has become a bit of a punchline because of his size and all the jokes about him, but take that away, and he's a damn good player.
Yeah.
If you just take the name off and show people the stats, yes.
Was he one of the best 20 players of his era?
Ooh, that's tough.
I say yes. From when he started to
he
when he
played in
retired?
a really good era.
He's got some big names to try and.
But when
There's probably 5 Blackhawks I'd put ahead of him from his era. Taves, Kane, Hossa, Keith.
One of the problems with Kessel is that his prime years, he was the best player on some bad Maple Leafs teams.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of his best years were missed because
Didn't have a lot of help either.
yeah,
well, and that might go against him because they hate him in Toronto for whatever
right,
reason.
exactly.
And you know how that goes for you. But to me, he's a Hall of Famer. He's one of the best players. From when he played, he was one of the top players. You know, in the conversations of being, you know, he's not a Sidney Crosby, he's not a Alex Ovechkin, but he's that next tier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Hall of Famer. Put him in right now.
He's 99th all-time in scoring. Is that right?
Sounds right to me.
I mean,
over
yeah.
1,000 points.
Yeah.
So,
Only so many guys have 1,000 points.
yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I mean, the stats speak for himself.
And he's 8 points away from 1,000.
8 points away from 1,000?
Yeah, he's got 992 according to
Oh, I thought he had
Reference.
1,000. Okay.
I did too.
All right. Well, he'll get there, and he's still a free agent, but he'll get there.
Hopefully, my dream is still alive that he
Yeah,
gets.
992.
Hopefully, he gets that 500 goal and 1,000 points somehow.
In
in a
Chicago
Blackhawks
with
uniform.
the Blackhawks.
Yeah.
That would be wonderful.
But
That'd be fun.
He can't wear 18 or 81, but
No, I can't wear 8.
80.
88.
It's a fat number.
80? Yeah.
give him 88.
I
Screw
think he
it.
wore 25 in
69, I
college.
don't know.
Eh.
No, they wouldn't. They didn't.
81 his whole career. And then
Andrew
8
Desjardins
in,
wore that
Vegas.
number with San Jose, and they wouldn't give it to him when he came here.
Yeah, they're not going to allow that here.
Of course, as Young Dangle God points out in the chat, don't forget his record for most hot dogs, Cokes consumed
26.
in an
Phil
NHL
you
Kessel
go.
wore 26 in college.
There you go.
All right, moving on. Old Sneaky Pete.
Oh, boy. Here he
Old
comes.
Sneaky Pete.
What are you projecting the IceHogs lines to be? This could be an entire episode for
Yeah,
what it's
the
worth.
IceHogs.
Yeah,
Young.
yeah.
I project the lines to be young.
No idea.
Yeah, let's. We can.
I could tell you who will be there.
Yeah, I mean, the AHL lines are insignificant because they're always changing because your roster changes from game to game.
Yeah.
So, like Lucas Reichel's not going to be an Ice Hog this year. We know, Ethan Del Mastro and Nolan Allen and Colton Dock and Jalen Lipin, Drew Comezzo. Those are all going to be new faces there that are going to be important players. So, I plan on doing a in-depth Ice Hogs preview article for ALLCHGO.com as we get closer to the season and we kind of know who's going to be.
Yeah, we got to see who's
because
going to be
they're probably
where.
still going to bring it. They're probably still going to sign a guy or two between now and the start of the camp. You never know what happens. The AHL is such a weird league to try to predict because guys are there 1 second and then they're gone the next and never come back.
Yeah.
So, or guys you never expected to be on your team all of a sudden become one of your most important players. So, but I'll definitely do an Ice Hogs preview for the website closer to October.
That makes sense. It's probably a good time to do it.
And
So
of
we
course,
know.
it's a good tease for Chris Peters, who's coming up here in a matter of minutes. I mean, maybe he can
Yeah,
tell you
give
about
us our Ice Hogs lines,
prospects,
Chris.
Well, no, I mean,
Call yourself an expert?
I think it's more about who will
Do
be
the Hershey
there.
Bears just for shits and giggles.
There you go.
Exactly.
All right, here is a question from Griffin H. Yee. Piggybacking off of last week, who would be your ideal penalty kill unit? I'll go with Taves and Bergeron up front, Nicholas Lidstrom and Scott Stevens on D, and Hasek is in net
Hasek
to
in
make
net.
incredible saves.
Hard to argue with that. I mean,
Yeah,
That's pretty
geez.
good.
Yeah.
You're tempted to take a natural winger over 2 centers, but if someone gets thrown out of the face-off circle, you got the next guy there to take it.
I mean, Bergeron's a good choice.
Kopitar
on
that list.
It's to me, I would throw a guy like Mitch Marner on my PK unit, just because
that's a scoring threat.
Yeah, he's been so good defensively the last few years. He's really and he's that scoring threat to where you catch a team nap and he streaks down the ice. Shorthanded goals have become a thing. Like, you rarely see them, but now you see more guys like that playing the PK. You want to catch these guys. Plus, at the end of a PK, you kind of want a guy like that out there as well for when you get back at 5-on-5. You don't just have 4 complete plugs out there and get caught that way. So, but there's a lot of great options.
Yeah, if I'm putting together my most trusted penalty kill unit, I would say I'm going to put out Jonathan Toews, Sidney Crosby, Nick Hjalmarsson, and I'm going to say Chris Pronger. Those would be my 4 to kill the penalty.
If I had to pick 4, I would do Crosby as well over Bergeron, just for the offensive point too. But Sid's no slouch defensively either.
Yeah, no.
I would do Marner, Crosby. I'd probably put Duncan Keith out there.
Yeah, I was going to say Keith.
That's a good one.
Instead of Stevens.
Yeah, and then
I mean, Nick Lidstrom's the best to ever do it. I never saw Bobby Orr play.
Yeah.
So I can't really comment. But in my lifetime, I've never seen a better defenseman than Nick Lidstrom.
Lidstrom
he does everything.
You couldn't go wrong with Duncan Keith and Chris Chelios in his prime as your PK.
That'd be fun.
Sure.
Punch you in the face a couple times too while you're at it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so many good choices for that.
It's pretty solid.
I like that question.
All right. Next up, we have Walter's Ringer, who goes at Civilized Human on the old Twitter machine. Who is your irrational favorite random Blackhawks player or players? Mine are James Black, Jim Cummins, and Jeff Shantz, who are 3 amazing names.
Those are
good old number 38,
agree.
James Black.
Great choices.
38, 15, and 11?
Yep.
All right.
Nailed it. Good job.
Yes, indeed.
Does Rutu count for me?
Tuomo.
Was that irrational? He was a first-round pick. He was a hyped prospect.
I think there's a lot of rational.
That's pretty rational.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not very. I mean, that's like me saying Christopher Steve, but that's not. Very irrational.
That's not really irrational. That's a good player.
Irrational. Liking. So that means liking just kind of like a
Just
guy.
for the hell of it.
Yeah,
kind of liking a guy.
I was a big fan of Ben Smith back in the day. I don't know why. He had a big goal once. He was a 4th liner.
Yeah.
Just seemed like a nice person.
He was a nice person.
I was a big Ben Smith
I did some
fan.
events with him. That's why he's traded.
Can't spell Ben Smith well. B-E-S-T. He's
That's
the
right.
best.
Absolutely.
Fun. I've probably mentioned this before, but a fun Ben Smith random trivia. He is a distant cousin of Eric Idle of Monty Python.
Oh yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
That's wild.
They've actually met at a game when he was playing for the Sharks.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I loved Enrico Ciccone.
Yes.
Just because it's such a fun name.
It's
Yes.
a great name, and he was such a comical goon.
He was the
Like
best.
that's all he was.
Yeah.
He was just there to beat people up. He even wore shorter gloves so he could throw them off faster.
Obviously.
That was his sole purpose, was to
Smart.
be an enforcer.
Smart.
Great name, terrible player, good fighter, entertaining as hell. And now he's like
He's in Parliament.
politician
He's in
in Canada?
Canadian Parliament.
Yeah,
or
something
the
like
mayor
that.
of some town or so. Yeah, he's in politics.
And I always really liked Alexei Zhamenov. I don't know if that counts either. But everybody hated him because he was traded for Roenick, but he was a good player.
Yeah.
He was a really good second-line center. But that's not what they traded for.
I liked Christian Rutu as a kid.
Okay.
Just because it was fun to say Rutu.
Rutu is a fun name.
Yeah.
Give me Jocelyn Lemieux. I like
Jocelyn
Jocelyn
Lemieux.
Lemieux.
Or John Ives Lemieux, right? No, it was John Ives.
I don't know.
Jean Ives Leroux?
Johnny Leroux.
Yeah.
23.
23, yeah.
A lot of good names in there.
Steve
Patrick,
Dubinsky.
Patrick Poulin, Adam
Oh,
Creighton.
I hate Patrick Poulin.
I hated him.
Whoever said that, block them. Oh, it's Charlie.
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
All right.
especially block him.
Kravazov, that's a good one.
Sergei Krivokrasov's a great one.
Craig Anderson.
Steve Sullivan, but there was some ration behind it.
Let's remember some guys.
I love Joe Murphy.
How about Steve Smith? I saw a video the other day
I love
of
Steve Smith, the Duke.
Probert with the Red Wings just runs Belfour, like just totally dirty. And immediately Steve Smith jumps in and goes after Probert. There was zero hesitation.
Yeah.
That guy was tougher than nails. He rarely fought, but when he did, he won. Born in Scotland. Just a badass. I love Steve Smith.
Yeah,
that might be
awesome.
That actually might be, if I was gonna buy like a jersey from the past, I might get a Steve Smith jersey just for shits.
Number 5.
Number
right?
5, yeah.
And
Famous for an own goal as an
that
Oiler.
ended the Oilers season.
Yeah, that's tough. That guy had a great career.
That was his last play with the Oilers. He was
Yeah.
on the Hawks.
Well, it's tough to come back from that.
Yeah.
I always like Keith Carney too.
Keith Carney. Number 4.
I like Kearney too. Underrated.
How about Mike Peluso? Let's name random
right.
defenders.
Yeah, I mean
This could be a whole show.
The first Stefan Matteau was great. I liked him. Brian Noonan was a favorite.
Brian
of mine.
Noonan.
Because I like saying Noonan, miss it.
We're going to break into Mailbag Monday on a Tuesday with the super chat from Thomas Salata. What was your favorite save of all time, Hawks or otherwise? He says, loved it when Hasek stacked the pads.
There was a play where Martin Brodeur made a save, and the puck trickled. He was a left glove. So it trickled to his right, and he was kind of exposed, and he just took the paddle and laid it flat on the ice. Just desperation, and saved it. Like, the only thing that could stop it was the paddle. He just, out of panic, took the stick, put it down on the ice, and the guy shot it directly onto the paddle, and he just flicked it out of there. It's total luck, but he did it, and I like it because when I was playing ball hockey, I was a goalie, and the same thing happened to me, and I did it, and it worked.
Hey.
I never would have thought to do it until I saw Martin Brodeur do it, and I did it, and the one time I tried it, it worked. So nice. that was my favorite save of all time.
That sounds like the one Hawks Hockey 98 here has in the chat from Braden Holtby's paddle save against the Golden Knights in the Stanley Cup Final 2018. That's one that sticks out to me. That's non Blackhawks of like that should have been a goal 99 times out of 100, and that goal I think would have tied the game late in the game. I think it was game 2, and if that goal goes in, Golden Knights were up 1-0 in that series, potentially going to overtime. I mean, that could have completely changed the direction of that series. But he made the save. Caps went on to win the next 4 games in a row, and
that worked out.
Won the cup.
Charlie brings up a good one. Eddie Belfour made a diving glove save on Sergei Fedorov.
Yeah, I remember that one.
I wish, can we just show the YouTube of that, or are we going to get sued?
Probably get sued.
Yeah. Probably get sued.
He wasn't a Hawk at the time.
Put it on your Twitters.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. He wasn't a Hawk at the time, but he became a Hawk. Marc-Andre Fleury against Nicholas Lindstrom, but 6 seconds to go in Game 7 of that Stanley Cup Final, made that huge save.
Oh, yeah.
And then the few seconds later, the Penguins are hoisting the cup. So that's one that sticks out. All those Hasek saves where he's got the slinky for his spine and doing the flipping over and all that stuff. Brodeur had some great saves. Patrick Waugh. So many good ones out there.
How about this from Chris Dubiel? Cristobal Huet Scorpion save versus Detroit in 09.
I don't remember that.
I mean, a Scorpion, that means he kicked out the leg.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Any of those Scorpion saves are pretty incredible.
Yeah, I don't remember the Huet. I don't remember I'm scarred for life for Huet because of that one game I went to Columbus to. When you have PTSD
from the cannon?
Well, yeah, because we sat 4 rows in front of the cannon and the prick gave up 7 goals.
That's tough.
Marc-Andre Fleury save that I remember is a couple of years ago. It was against the Maple Leafs early in the season, and he just makes this. I've pulled it up on YouTube here. Late in the third period in a 1-goal game, just makes a desperation diving save off of a rebounded puck that I think it's Nick Patan just kind of throws at the net, and he's completely out of position, dives back, grabs it, snags it, saves the game. Golden Knights win. I believe it's the next day Mike Babcock is fired from the Maple Leafs. So I always remember Fleury making that save because of the snowball effect after.
Yeah.
So that's a good one that sticks out for me. As
I think I'm with Zach Osborne. It says my favorite save of all time was every save Niemi and Crow made on our way to our 3 most recent cups.
Hard to argue.
What about the saves that Scott Darling made? No love for him.
Yeah, how about Ray Emery? Wow.
Yeah, Ray
Okay,
no,
Zach,
he never.
Erasure.
I don't think
Emery
Emery
never
played
got
in the 2013
No, he
Cup.
just played on the team, though.
Well,
Cup run.
wait, Emery, didn't he get some games?
Not in the
didn't he?
playoffs, though, I don't think.
He didn't?
No. People wanted him to get in the Stanley Cup.
There was a
There was that game in Calgary.
there was
Remember?
a legit debate between
Yeah,
Emery and
going
Crawford.
into Game 5 of the Stanley Cup final, right? Or was it Game
Was it the
6?
final? I just remember who was going to be the starter for the start of the playoffs.
We all remember the blatant disrespect Corey Crawford got during his career.
Yes.
Only now is it finally starting to be taken away.
I hope so.
Yeah.
How many more we got?
So we have 2 more.
All right, we'll save them for tomorrow.
We'll save them for tomorrow because Chris is in the waiting room. Do you want to run ads first?
Yes,
before we get
we're
started?
going to tell
He's in the
everybody
green
about
room.
Hooters. It is your spot to catch all the games this season. Step up to their plate for their world-famous wings, delicious seafood, stacked sandwiches, those are the best kind, salads for some reason, and more. Tons of great beer specials and $6 drinks all day, every day. Check out Hooters Seafood Specials, $19.83 for a pound of crab legs and great prices on buffalo and steamed shrimp. And Hooters is celebrating 40 years in business all year long. In honor of the anniversary, on the 4th of every month, Hooters will be hosting throwback events, bringing the 80s back with 83-cent wings and other great specials. The next one is on September 4th. So put that in your calendar. Make sure you show up to Hooters. And our CHGO Crosstown Classic coverage is presented by Hooters. It's your spot to catch all the games. Step up to the plate for all the great wings, seafood, stacked sandwiches, all the things I mentioned. At Hooters, it's always easy to pick a winner. 11 Chicagoland locations. Visit originalhooters.com for more info. That's an important web address, originalhooters.com. You don't want to go to the wrong one,
Yeah.
especially at work.
Don't go to the fakehooters.com.
Right.
Go to the originalhooters.com.
Exactly right.
I'm not a fan of fake Hooters.
Hey, you know what's real? The deliciousness of Goose Island beer. They are the proud beer sponsor of us here at CHGO, and they have been Chicago's beer since 1988.
Honkers and Hooters.
I'm sure you can find plenty of delicious Goose Island at your local Hooters. They might have the Goose IPA, the 6-time medal winner at the Great American Beer Fest, which is always in style with a citrus aroma and bold hop finish. The Tropical Beer Hug, the dry hopped Imperial IPA that is a 9.9 ABV that's dangerously easy to drink. The Full Pocket Pills, the everyday beer. It's what the Goose Island beer brewers are drinking. And of course, you can always find the Golden 312, the wheat ale, the staple of Goose Island's illustrious beer roster. You can grab ultra fresh brewery exclusive beers at Goose Island's original brew house on Clybourne Avenue in Lincoln Park, or you can go to their tap room on Fulton Street in Westtown. Again, that's the Goose Island Beer Company, Chicago's beer.
All right, now it is time to welcome one of our favorite guests. We can't say favorite because other people listen, and he's really our favorite, but just don't tell anybody else. It's Chris Peters from FloHockey. It says here on Twitter, senior content creator. Oh, that's senior. My bad. Senior content creator at FloHockey. Follow him on Twitter at Chris M. Peters. Chris, thanks for being with us, man. It's good to see you again.
Hey, it's a great to be with you. Thank you for the nice honorific of senior content creator. I appreciate it.
You got to play up the senior thing. You don't sound old when you're senior. You know what I mean?
Right, that's true. Good point.
Perfect.
Chris, I noticed that we've ditched the White Sox hat since your last
Yeah, what
appearance.
happened?
Oh, I mean, well, I'm going to the game on Sunday, so
Oh, there you go. Okay.
yeah, so I'll be wearing it then. I guess I'm just keeping it
Winners
Keep it
of three
fresh
for
straight.
now.
Come
I
on.
don't know.
Keeping it
I
fresh.
still got all
fresh.
my. You can't see it. It's just off camera, but I still got all my White Sox photos and stuff up there. I haven't. I mean, I've given up on this season, of course, but never on the franchise
you never
as
know.
a whole.
They might get
No,
hot.
I know. No, I know. No,
Could be worse.
I've
They could be the
been through
Royals.
this. Yeah, that's true. Very
Exactly.
Hey, there's always somebody worse, typically.
I mean, it's got to win like 20 in a row, and they'll be at 500.
Yeah, that's
21
it.
in a
Yeah.
row, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Right back in
Hey,
it.
they're
Can
1/7
we
of
talk
the
about
way
hockey
there.
prospects now? Because
Yes,
I'm
absolutely.
really sad and depressed. I don't want. I'm gonna keep the energy level up.
Yes, let's do that. Good idea. Good idea. So we saw you at the draft. We've not spoken to you since the draft. So before we get into the World Junior Summer Showcase that happened last week, I just sort of welcome your thoughts on the Blackhawks draft class. We've been playing the audio of you calling Connor Bedard the shortcut for months and months and months. People have heard all that, but as far as the rest of the class, what can you tell us? What are your feelings? How did the Hawks do in Nashville at the draft this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this was yet another good year and obviously an important year for the next steps. And then to have Bedard as the centerpiece is great. But then, I think that the Blackhawks, I was as surprised as I think the Blackhawks were that Oliver Moore was still available to them later in the first round. And I think that I didn't see him getting past a number of those teams there. And then all of a sudden there he is. And, I think Winnipeg was probably the one where it's like, they've had a lot of American guys, especially from the national team program, and they didn't take them. And so, it makes it a pretty easy trip up to the podium. And that's a key piece. I think that in terms of pure upside, you look at the goaltending of Adam Guyon, and there's a lot of unknowns yet. I think it's a high risk pick, but at the same time, potential for massive reward. He's a bit of a late bloomer. Nobody knew about him a year ago. And then he goes and he was the star goalie for Slovakia at the World Championship and was a goal away from beating Connor Bedard in this quarterfinals. But then Connor Bedard, did the thing that he's probably going to do many, many times for Chicago in that tournament. And so, I think as a whole, they also had a boatload of picks. So when you have a lot of picks and you have a lot of options available to you, you're going to feel good about the variety that you have. I think that you're going to feel good about the depth that you've created. And that's probably the biggest thing that the Blackhawks have now that they didn't have before was there's really a lot of variety. There's a lot of different positions represented. And then now there's guys that fit a lot of places. Did they maybe reach on some of the guys that they took? Sure. I mean, I think that when you have so many picks, you can be pickier about the guys that you want. You want to get the guys that you wanted. So guys like Martin Misiak, maybe that was a little early, but it was also, you look at the way that he played in the playoffs for Youngstown last year, and you say, well, teams aren't going to be sleeping on this guy anymore because he was really good when he went at the most important time of the season. So that was really good for them to get a guy like that who, is going to head to Erie next year. He's going to get another opportunity to be a big time player in a key situation for a team that's, on the rise. They've got some good players. So, I think in general, when you look at what the Blackhawks have done, in the last 2 years, you say, okay, this looks like the prospect pool of a team that's going somewhere. There are plenty of teams that have a lot of draft prospects. There aren't as many teams that have the depth and the variety of positions available. You look down up and down and you say, okay, well, they've got two really good goalie prospects. And, I still am a Drew Comesso believer. You got Adam Guyon as well. You look at the guys that they have down the middle. You look at the guys they have on defense led by Kevin Korchinski. There are positions represented throughout the lineup that you feel like, hey, there's some piece for the future here. And then on top of that, they probably still will struggle this season. It's not going to be an overnight fix. It's going to definitely shorten the amount of time and the amount of pain that I think they're going to have to go through by getting Connor Bedard. But, I still think that there's potential to add even more next year. And if they're a lottery team next year, what kind of picks will be available. Next year's a really good year for defensemen. So I think in general, the long and short of it is, this is a prospect system that looks way stronger than it did. And obviously now you've got a franchise centerpiece, which every team is hoping they get in the draft. And it's just all about timing. Blackhawks picked the best possible year to be really bad.
All according to plan.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and some of those guys that are looking to be focal points of the prospect system and focal points of the rebirth of the Blackhawks in this new era of hockey, we're part of the World Junior Summer Showcase this past week with Team USA. Guys like Sam Renzel, Gavin Hayes, Oliver Moore, and Frank Nazar. What were your initial reactions to the camps that those guys had, and was there anything that surprised you from any of them that maybe you weren't expecting to see in a summer setting?
Well, I think the headline for, at least as far as Chicago Blackhawks prospects are concerned, is how good Frank Nazar was in this camp. He missed most of last season with an injury and surgery, and he was out for a while, and, it was unclear when he would get back. He gets back in February, and you could tell, he wasn't quite himself. He was also coming into the season when everything's ramped up and he's just getting started. It wasn't really a fair comparison to him. So we wanted to see what he would look like with more time, better health. Well, he looked amazing at this camp. He looked like a guy that should be on the U.S. World Junior team. He looked like a guy that's going to have a big year in college hockey. He's not a big guy, but he's quick. He's shifty. He's got skill. He's good defensively, even though he doesn't have that tremendous size. So, he's able to, win faceoffs. He had several clean faceoff wins where, created scoring chances off of that. And that's really great to see. So he looks like he's back to the way that he was playing in his draft year. The reason that he was a guy that went in the top 15 as a draft eligible. I think he's a really good player for the now and then also for the long term. What is he ultimately going to be as an NHLer? Is he a middle six guy? Probably. There's obviously you want to make sure that he's continuing to build strength and find ways to diversify his game a little bit more. But I mean, in terms of all the offensive elements that we've come to know and expect from him, and the quickness that he's shown and the tenacity that he's played with, those were all evident. And this is, so I think of all the guys in the camp, he was probably the one that really looked like he had come the furthest year over year, considering where he was last year with the injury. So great news there. In terms of the other guys, I think Sam Rinzel had a really good start to camp, and he kind of went backwards as it went on. Not necessarily all that surprising. I think that the thing that we have to keep in mind about Sam Rinzel is he was a project pick when he was selected. It was all going to be about time and patience and allowing him to develop. And you also have to remember he's making the jump directly from the USHL to the World Junior. And that is a gigantic leap in terms of, the pace of the game, what he's able to do with the puck. And I think he had to learn the hard way. You got to manage the puck a little bit better. You can't go on as many runs up the ice as he would in the USHL. So that was a bit of a learning process for him. That said, he's big. He looks stronger. I think that he's more put together as a player than he was last year. The question is going to be for him, is he ready for this step at the World Juniors? And I think that is still unanswered. I don't think he necessarily locked himself into the roster. I did put him on my projected roster because USA needs some size in the back end, and he has the size and the mobility and the ability to move pucks that I think is helpful. But he is going to need more time. Now he's going to the University of Minnesota next year. Let's see what he looks like in the first half. Let's see how he handles the pace of college, because that's pretty close, at least, to the World Junior level. It's a little bit closer than what he got at the USHL last year. So I'll be very fascinated to see exactly how that all plays out for him. So he's on the bubble, but he was on my projected roster, which is on FloHockey right now. So there's that. But then in terms of the other guys, Oliver Moore and Gavin Hayes, I have them both on the projected roster as well. Oliver Moore was a guy who started a little bit slow and got better as the camp went on. Fastest player on the ice every single game that he played, fastest player in camp. He'll probably be one of, if not the fastest player in college hockey next year. Just a remarkable skater, and that was evident throughout the camp. I think if there were a couple things that I want to see improvement on, it's the ability to drive play a little bit more. He didn't make as many plays. He finished a lot of plays, so he's taking advantage of his opportunities that were there, but I'd like to see him fight through it a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, he didn't necessarily make as many plays as I would like to see, but you could see the role that he could carve out in a very, kind of versatile player where he can play in a lot of different places in the lineup, which makes him a good option to potentially be, a 13th forward or an extra forward. It's a kind of a break glass in case of emergency kind of guy who probably won't play in the top 6 this year, but certainly will be a prominent guy next year. And then lastly, Gavin Hayes, who, I think he's a really good junior player. He's a guy that has made, a living on, he can score goals and he's got some heaviness to him, some size. And I think he's got a great chance. I thought he acquitted himself well and looked like a guy that could be on USA's 4th line this year. That's, probably long-term. Who knows? That might be the role that he ends up playing. But I think he's a guy that provides a lot of scoring depth too. So those 4 guys all put themselves in a position to make the team. I think Hayes, I feel as comfortable as I do about anybody else that I put on the projected roster because I thought he played so well in camp and showed that he could play a defined role. But then after that, I think you look at obviously Nazar having a great camp, Moore having a strong camp, Rinzel doing enough to stay in the conversation. All in all, a good camp for those Blackhawks prospects.
So the top 3 Hawks offensive prospects, Bedard, Nazar, and Moore, and whichever you want to rank those last 2, they're all currently centers. Of those 3, are they all NHL centers? Who do you think are for sure NHL centers of that group?
Well, I think the thing is I don't think you could have all three be centers on the same team.
Right.
So the fact of the matter is you're talking about, three guys that are sub 6 foot. And that is, if there's one position in the NHL where you don't see that as commonly, it's center. Obviously defense as well, but so I think that, in all likelihood, you're looking at probably Nazar being a wing at the NHL level. He is very good on faceoffs. He's defensively responsible. He does all the things well. It's just a matter of, can he play a heavy enough game at his size to be an effective two-way center at the NHL level. But you want that offensive capability that he brings, that spark plug nature. I think that he's a guy that tries to model his game a bit after like Braden Point, who is a guy that, can play both. He can do both. He can be center, he can be wing. Obviously a center more frequently now. So that's a good sign. Oliver Moore, same thing. I think that at the end of the day, if I'm looking at the three of them in terms of pure hockey sense, I've got the other two guys ahead of him, which gives them a little bit more of an advantage in terms of playing center. I don't think he's as much of a play driver, but that said, I think he's, of those three, among the best defensively. So, he gives you a little bit of that. So I think it'd be very hard for all three of them to be centers on the same NHL team. But I do think that they each fit into the lineup, and there's definitely spots for those guys. Bedard, I think you want him to have the puck as much as humanly possible. And the best way to do that is to keep him in his natural position. So I think that all three of those guys have the potential to slot over, with Bedard obviously being the most likely option to be a number one center in the NHL.
The reason I ask about Bedard is because last year's World Juniors, he was not playing center. He was playing wing, and I maybe it was just a roster fit sort of a thing, but that sort of raised my eyebrows when I saw that. So that's kind of why I'm curious, is he an NHL center or not?
Yeah, and I think in that particular instance, it just had to do more with the depth of Canada and the fact that, basically they had guys that were probably a little bit better defensively in their mix. And I'm trying, Shane Wright obviously had a size advantage, a strength advantage, an experience advantage. So that allowed that. And I do think that, the World Juniors is always a little bit more about what you're doing right at that moment. And at that moment, Connor Bedard was a 17-year-old sub 6 foot player, that hasn't really fully physically developed yet. When you get him to his peak at the NHL level, you're expecting a guy that's physically stronger. He's still not going to be tall, but he's probably going to be an even better skater. He's going to be more defensively responsible. So I really, to me, I don't think there's much of a chance that he is a long-term wing. I just think that his ability to drive play, his hand skills, his hockey sense, all of that to me screams natural center. And then the fact that he can be the goal scorer that he is, even at the center position with all the additional responsibilities, just speaks to how good of a player he is.
You mentioned Oliver Moore and how you thought he might be one of the best players in all of college hockey this coming year at University of Minnesota. How big of an opportunity does he have to do that since Logan Cooley seemingly changed his mind and went pro? And do you think there's any chance Oliver Moore follows that same path and is a one and done at Minnesota, or do you think he's it all depends on what he does this season?
Yeah, so I think for me, I think he'll be one of the best skaters in terms of his skating ability in college hockey. I just want to make that clear. I think that there's still a ways for him to go before he's going to be one of the best players. This is actually a loaded year, even without Logan Cooley, in terms of a Hobie Baker race and different things like that. But what I would say about Oliver Moore is, the opportunity that's in front of him with Logan Cooley leaving is a substantial one. The fact that the University of Minnesota within a couple of weeks loses their number one center and now has to replace him puts Oliver Moore in a position to get there. They're also, so they now have lost 2/3 of their top line from last season, which was a significant portion of their scoring. The only one still there is Jimmy Snuggerud, who's a Blues prospect and a tremendous goal scorer and a guy that, you want to make sure that you have a facilitator with him. The question I have is Oliver Moore enough of a facilitator, a playmaker to play with a pure trigger man in Jimmy Snuggerud as a top line center? or is there a better fit for him a little further down the lineup? The question is, does Minnesota have any other better options? And I'm not necessarily sure that they do. Oliver Moore is being brought in as one of the best recruits they've had in the last couple of years. Logan Cooley excluded. But I mean, in terms of draft pedigree and even higher draft pedigree than both Snuggerud and Matthew Nyes, who was there last year, some of the first round defensemen that they've had. So, he has this opportunity. In terms of what I think he'll be, Logan Cooley is now, because guys like him, one and dones, have become increasingly rare in hockey, which is kind of like an oxymoron, increasingly rare. But it is something that we don't see as much. And I don't think that Oliver Moore is a one and done player. I think he has too far to go to develop. And I think what we want to see from him over the next couple of years is to bring more of that play driving element. We've talked a lot about how sometimes his hockey sense doesn't catch up with his hands and his feet. And so we need to see that happen as well. We want to see him be a dominant center, a dominant two-way center at the collegiate game before you make the commitment to being an NHL regular. I mean, this is the kind of guy, a lot of these college players that stay at least 2 years, skip the AHL, go straight to the NHL roster and make an impact. You look at Matty Beniers, you look at Owen Power, you look at even Cale Makar, Quinn Hughes. It happens a lot more frequently with defensemen. But this year we've had 2 one-and-dones with both Fantilli and Cooley leaving for the pros, and we'll see how they do. There have been plenty of guys that did one-and-done and did just fine. Dylan Larkin was an all-star, I think, in his first year as a one-and-done. So, you never really know. It depends on the player. But as far as I'm concerned, I think the timeline for Oliver Moore is still going into the at least 2 years at Minnesota and then making a decision from there.
Wanted to shift some attention from the U.S. Prospects that the Blackhawks have to the Canadian ones. Canada wasn't really doing much of a summer showcase event, more or less just kind of like a Team Canada summit, I guess you'd call it. It was all off ice. Kevin Korchinski obviously was there. He's expected to be a big part of Team Canada for the World Juniors if he's made available by the Blackhawks, which I think we all assume he will be. But Sam Savoie was there, and I've seen him in a couple different publications projected to potentially make Team Canada at the World Juniors. What do you make of his chances to be a part of that team when the tournament comes?
Yeah, I think he's got a chance for sure. It's going to be really interesting to see kind of how Canada is able to structure their roster. The expectation is they won't have Bedard, they won't have Fantilli. There are going to be a number of guys missing. They probably won't have a good chunk of guys. And so the roster that Canada is going to be able to bring this year isn't as exciting, I don't think, as certainly not as last year's and some of the other ones that they've had in recent times. And, that does leave the door open. I think, with Savoie, he's kind of has kind of spark plug elements to him. He's got some grit to that skill that he has. And I think that's ultimately, a testament to how far he's come as a player. This is a tournament where teams definitely want to have more 19-year-olds than they do 18 and 17-year-olds. So that's another advantage to him where he'll be, in that group of players. So, I think if he does make it, it'll probably be in a depth role. Canada still has quite a bit of skill throughout their lineup. They also, they have quite a few players that are on the smaller side right now too, which he would kind of fit into that category as well. So, I would say it's really the fact that Canada didn't have an evaluation camp this year, which is partially tied to the 2018 scandal where, there were a lot of budgetary cuts and all that money was redirected away from the junior team. So there otherwise would have been an on-ice component to this, but they just had this, basically meet a Zoom call with their guys, so it's hard to say. So much is going to be determined by the first half of next season, which makes it a little bit kind of tougher. Usually at this time, we would have an idea because we get to see line combinations. We get to see what the coaching staff is thinking. We do all these different things like we just did at USA's camp, and we don't have that advantage here. So it's tough to put odds on it. But certainly if you're at that stage where you're among the, however, the 40 plus guys that they invited to that meeting, that's a pretty good indication of where you're at right now, and certainly a feather in his cap.
Is there? We've talked a lot about the big names in the Hawks system. Is there somebody you think that maybe Hawks fans might be sleeping on a little bit in terms of long-term projection?
Ooh, I think the guy that certainly we want to keep a real close eye on this year is Ryan Green at Boston University. He was on the cusp of making Canada's junior team last year. I mean, he was really close to making it. And unfortunately now aged out, not an option for him. He won't be there, but it's really rare for a guy from the USHL who had played the previous season, in the USHL, and then was playing US college hockey to get that far into that process. And the reason that he did is because he's got size, he's got strength, he's got two-way ability, and he put up really good numbers last year. I mean, 31 points in 38 games as a freshman. This is a guy that I think you need to watch a lot more closely in terms of, could he be part of this long-term solution? He'd probably be a depth guy. He'd probably be, a bottom six forward, a bottom six center. But I like his two-way capabilities. I like the way that he plays in a lot of different, areas. And I still think that there's a lot of him, there a lot more for him to tap into, which is a really great thing. So Boston University is going to be a top-tier team once again this year. They've got Macklin Celebrini coming in, number one recruit in college hockey. They've got, Lane Hudson coming back, who was the top freshman defenseman in college hockey last year and probably should have been a Hobey Baker hat trick finalist the way he played. This is a team that has every reason to believe that they can compete for a national championship next year. And guys like Ryan Green are going to have to play an outsized role if that's going to actually happen, because he's now a veteran player. So that's a guy to definitely keep an eye on. I think he's not terribly far away from being a signable player. And so, maybe he plays this year, maybe he gets a contract, maybe plays one more after this. But that's a guy that I think absolutely has an opportunity to rise to, a contributor at the NHL level.
We're running close to the end of time, but time for one more. Thanks for being generous with your time, Chris. I kind of want to get your opinion on something we've debated and discussed this offseason, and that's what happens with Kevin Korchinski this year. Of course, the CHL rule is it's back to Seattle or the NHL. There's no AHL as an option for him. And a player like him that might serve as a disadvantage a little bit. If you're Kyle Davidson and you get to make the call, and Korchinski in training camp and preseason looks like he can handle the NHL in a limited role, what do you do? Is it more beneficial for him to be a big fish in a small pond in the WHL, or do you let him take his lumps at the NHL level?
I think it really depends on how you feel about your roster and how you're able to insulate him and who you're going to surround him with. There's probably a benefit to being around guys like Seth Jones and Connor Murphy and whoever else is going to be part of this blue line. There's benefits to that. The question is, in terms of Kevin Korchinski, is he physically ready? Is he mentally ready? Is there a reason beyond we think he can be a part of our team and help to keep him on the roster? I mean, if you feel it's best for his development, then you bring him in. My lean would be to go back to Seattle. He still has physical strength and development that he needs to build up. He would be probably Canada's number one defenseman at the World Junior Championship next year. He did have a dominant season, but Seattle is going to sustain a few losses from their team from last year. And so now they have to kind of restart a little bit, and that puts more pressure on him. It's a little bit of an adverse situation. It's not like they're going to be bad. They're still going to be quite good. They have a really good roster. And oddly enough, Macklin Celebrini, they have the rights to him too, and unfortunately didn't get him for themselves. The thing is with Korchinski, as long as he's in the right position, there's really no need to rush in terms of timeline for the Blackhawks, unless you think he's just far exceeded junior hockey. And based on what I saw last year, as good as he was, and I'm telling you, he was awesome last year. There was so much to like about his game. You could still see that he's still there. His game needs to mature more before he can be an every night NHL defenseman. But I do think there is some value to being at the NHL level. I think the other question the Blackhawks have to ask themselves about this entire phase of this rebuild is, what kind of culture are they building within the current organization, and how valuable would it be to have these younger players either contribute to it or be exposed to it in some way. And I think you probably won't have a good feel for that until you get through this season, because you've pushed a ton aside. You've pushed a lot of guys out. You've brought a lot of new guys in, and you kind of need to let that take hold. And that's going to be a really critical piece of the. But I think as far as the Blackhawks are concerned, I think you have to go into camp giving Kevin Korchinski every opportunity to make the team, but he only makes the team if you feel he's truly ready. And if he's not, maybe you give him the 9 games. Maybe you let him play. You give him a taste of the NHL. You let him be around your team. Maybe you do what Seattle did with Shane Wright last year, and you kind of press box him when you need to and put him on there and let him go to the World Juniors and all that stuff. I don't think that's a really great way to do it. I thought that Shane Wright should have been in junior all year last year and just building up his confidence. But, I think Kevin Korchinski has confidence. He's been a dominant player. How much more can he learn? I guess that's the question. But I think that's a decision that you can't make until training camp. But my lean is always more time is better than too early. So patience is usually the best path.
Got one?
We're out of time.
We got time. There's no one after
we'll save
us,
it.
right?
The question I have has plenty
There
of
is?
time to figure it out. So
All right.
We'll save it for the next.
I was ready to solve.
I do have one more for you, Chris. And
All right,
it's,
sure, Jay.
It's on the heels of our Mailbag Monday show. Everyone asks us how we got to be hockey fans, right?
Yeah.
For you, what began the process of you becoming a prospect expert? How did you decide that career path for yourself? Because I'm curious.
I mean, I don't think I really decided it. I think it just kind of happened. So it's interesting. So basically my career path has been super windy to get to this point. I was super lucky to get an internship, the Brian Fishman internship with USA Hockey when I was just out of college. I worked for the club hockey team at Iowa State. I played hockey growing up. I was a terrible JV hockey player at Mount Carmel High School. I mean, really bad, like honestly awful. And and this is the sport I love more than anything, put all my time into it, still awful. But anyway, worked for the club team at Iowa State, got this USA Hockey internship. And then right after that, I went to the National Team Development Program for 2 years, where I worked as their communications person. And that allowed me to be around some really amazing people and coaches. Like John Hines was a head coach there when I was there, so early in his career, and just being around somebody at that level who was kind enough to let me watch video with the coaching staff and do all this other stuff and just be part of the staff. You got to see the development process. And that's probably where the wheels started turning. So I would watch, when I was there, I had the 91 birth year, which was like Cam Fowler was the top player from that birth year. The 92s, we had like Jack Campbell and a bunch of really good defensemen. And then the 93s as well, we had like JT Miller and some guys like that. John Gibson. So, to watch those guys and how they developed was really fascinating to me. And then by chance, I got married while I was there. My wife actually ended up having a job change, and we moved back to Iowa, where she's from. And I'm like, okay, well, my career in hockey is over. That was a fun 3 years. I'm done. But the one thing that I had was this institutional knowledge of how things worked within USA Hockey, how the development process works a little bit. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll just start a blog and start writing about the World Junior Championship. So I started it that year, and that kind of is where it started. And then I was like, oh, this is actually fun. And then I started looking at other leagues, and I started looking at the USHL, college hockey, started expanding all that. And so basically it got to a point where everything beneath the NHL I had an interest in. And then I kind of got off path. I got lucky. CBS Sports hired me to do their NHL blog. And at first it was as a draft guy, just part-time. And then they changed their staff and they're like, hey, you want to cover the NHL? And I was like, sure. So did that for a couple of years. One of the highlights of my career during that process was that, being in the building for the 2015 Stanley Cup and covering that for CBS Sports, going on the ice after the game in my hometown was really cool. So it's been that winding path, and then just through a series of lucky breaks here and there, you get the chance to go to CBS Sports, you get a chance to go to ESPN, and then Daily Faceoff, and now FloHockey. And it just the best part about being a prospect writer is, you're constantly learning and there's always new things. And the amazing thing is that if you don't fail at this, you're probably a genius and you should be working for you should just be an NHL, work for every NHL team. Mm-hmm. But when you fail, you learn so much. And so you have to do things. Luckily earlier in my career, I made a lot of mistakes that nobody saw. And now I make mistakes that a lot of people see, but at least I can learn from them and figure things out. And I think it's made me better at this. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of how it happened. I mean, I'm a lifelong hockey fan, grew up in Chicago. My dad was on the fire department hockey team. We had all this great, this great exposure to the game, and it's just always been a part of my life. And by sheer necessity and boredom, essentially, when my wife had that job change and I was like, I have no career. One happened. So I feel super lucky that it happened. I still live in Iowa. I still do the job from Iowa. And I think it gets more fun every single year I do it. So, I appreciate the question. And yeah, it's a weird way to do it, but yeah, that's how it happened.
Hey, we're glad it worked out because, we love having you on, Chris. We love your expertise, and every time we have you on, Hawks fans get very, very excited. So here's many more conversations in the future, and keep things up at FloHockey. It's great stuff. Make sure you're following Chris at Chris M. Peters. You've been overly valuable with your time, so we're going to let you go. Thanks so much, man. We appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Always fun to do the show with you. Great to be talking to my pals in Chicago. So, have a good one, guys.
All right, take care, Chris. That is Chris Peters of FloHockey. He is the best, and he had a career change. And if you're looking for one, students just like you with full-time jobs, families, and full-time sports fandoms are going back to school. Why? They want to get a respected degree from my alma mater, Lewis University, 35 miles southwest of Chicago in Romeoville. Lewis is ranked as one of U.S. News and World Report's top-tier colleges, and they partner with numerous employers for tuition discounts and offer evening, online, and blended formats to help you balance work, family, and education. Their faculty brings real-world experience and instruction to the classroom, which will help you with your new career. They offer career support and academic resources for all students, including adult students. And if you're looking to complete your bachelor's or master's degree or enroll in a professional certificate program, Lewis has the right one for you. How about computer science as a grad program? 8-week sessions. They can be completed in 1 year with concentrations in software engineering, AI, cybersecurity, digital forensics, enterprise, and cloud computing. That sounds like something that's important these days. Yeah. Business analytics, finance, MBAs, project management, all sorts of stuff. And you've got several adult undergrads with accelerated degree completion programs in computer science, aviation maintenance technology certificates, business analytics, criminal justice, business programs, and tech programs. Check it out, lewisu.edu/youcandothis, and discover how a degree from Lewis can help you build a better world.
Yep, your future will definitely get brighter with a degree from Lewis University. And with a brighter future ahead, you're going to need a pair of awesome sunglasses.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
And that is where our friends at Shady Rays have you covered for the warm weather and your bright futures with their premium polarized shades that come at a very affordable price. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company that offers a world-class product that's just as good as any expensive pair we've worn. I say even better. They're way too humble at the Shady Rays factory. Durable frames and extremely clear optics for all of your outdoor adventures. That's not all. Shady Rays offers the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every pair of sunglasses is backed by lost and broken replacements. If you lose or break your pair, even on the very first day you own them, they're going to send you a brand new pair. No questions asked. They don't care how you broke them or lost them. They're just going to replace them for you. Wear your Shady Rays with confidence because they have your back long after you purchase. And together with their customers, Shady Rays is providing much-needed support to nonprofit partners throughout the United States with their Shady Rays Impact Program. They're doing everything from building play sets for pediatric cancer patients to providing young adults with MS the outdoor adventure of a lifetime. Shady Rays is making an impact in your community and others like it now and for years to come. And if you don't love your Shady Rays, but you're going to, just in case you don't, you can exchange them for a new pair or return them for free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop over at ShadyRays.com. And while you're shopping at ShadyRays.com, throw in at least 2 pairs into your shopping cart And then use the promo code CHGO at checkout, and you're going to get the best deal of the season, 50% off all orders of 2 or more of their Polaroid sunglasses, rated 5 stars by over 250,000 satisfied customers.
That's a lot of satisfied customers. And time's running out. If you want to sign up for the CHGO Kickoff Classic Golf Tournament at Cog Hill, that's August 25th, 9 p.m., allchgo.com.
Yeah.
Navigate over to our events tab and join us at Cog Hill. It's going to be awesome. Your entry fee includes 18 holes with a cart, exclusive Pins and Aces tee gift for every player, access to our limited edition Pins and Aces and CHGO Polo, whole contest, giveaways, the whole deal, lunch, drinks, ceremony after the round. If you're a diehard, which you should be by now, you will save on the event. Go check it out, allchgo.com. Navigate over to that events page and click that first event there, and you'll see all the info on the CHGO Kickoff Classic, as well as our CHGO Crosstown Series, which happens on the 16th at Wrigley Field.
Yep.
All the info right there for you, allchgo.com.
Got a new Pins and Aces hat and glove in the mail.
Nice.
Be looking fresh for the golf outing. Can't wait for it.
I get to use my Chubbs Peterson ball marker from Pins and Aces when we go. Not that I'm ever going to hit the green, but it'll be fun to pretend.
Don't forget the beef sleeve.
I got to bring the beef sleeve,
Yeah,
too.
you got to bring the beef sleeve.
I got to
That's
disinfect the
handy.
beef sleeve, but I will bring
Disinfect it with more beef juice.
it. That's right. That's a disinfectant, right?
I got to be honest, you probably should have done that immediately.
I did
but-
it. I did. I did.
I got my
ran some water
foursome
on
set
it.
up. I'm excited.
There you go.
I got some friends joining me on the Cog Hill. We're going to tear it up. I should probably hit a range before we've got
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
17 days away. I need
Just
to
wing it. You and I can compete for that last place trophy. It's going to be fun. Join
I
us
think
out
that's
there.
going to be a more hotly contested trophy than the first place trophy.
Probably.
It's gonna be a tank golf outing.
It's going to be an 18-way tie for last place.
Exactly. All right, we'll see everybody out there. allchgo.com. Go to that events tab for all the info. We're back tomorrow, 2 o'clock. If you don't know, tomorrow is the Rocky Wirtz Memorial Ceremony. That's at 11 at the United Center. I know the gates open at 9:30 if you want to go. We're going to be there covering it. We will have a reaction afterwards at 2 o'clock. And then a little programming note. Thursday, we're going to be on a little bit early. We're going to be on at 1 o'clock on Thursday. So set a reminder an hour early on Thursday. But we're back tomorrow, 2 o'clock, with full coverage of the Rocky Wirtz Memorial Ceremony on the CHGO Blackhawks Podcast.